Y'all ready to jump into it? You got me for one more week. Is that okay? Is that okay? One more week. Dad will be back. He'll be back next week, I promise. And so just bear with me. It'll be short today, okay? Well, Rachel and I, we've been married for 5 years. Is that right? I'm glad that was right because I just made that up. So, all right, so we get married, all right? We get married, and when we got married, I was living in Virginia. I was working at a church. I was pastoring a church, and I was finishing up school. So, I mean, she knew the deal that when we got married, that was the plan. We were going to go up to Virginia, and we did that. So, before we moved, we were going through some of her boxes, just like at her mom's house, right? I don't know if you remember this, but we were going through boxes, and she had all kinds of stuff. All kinds of interesting things that I just was like, man, I can't believe you kept all this stuff. So she had like old concert tickets that she had gone to, like from like middle school probably. Britney Spears. Did you go to Britney Spears? But it was an old concert. New Kids on the Block. Now you're on that. But they had like concert tickets, and she had handwritten notes from her and her friends. You remember you used to pass notes at school? She kept some of those from like some of her friends. I thought, oh, that's so sweet. She had old clothes, like clothes from high school, clothes from middle school. I said, why are you keeping clothes from middle school? You're never going to be able to. And then she hit me in the face, and I could not believe that she hit me in the face. She really didn't hit me in the face, but she did have some old clothes from middle school. I thought, God, why'd you have to go? She was all-state chorus singer at Lovejoy High School, and so she had some of her old choral music, some of her charts, and we just kind of were looking through these, and just to hear her tell stories, I thought it was so cool. But then she had a box, and I'd never heard of this kind of a box, and maybe you ladies know about this box. It's called the boyfriend box. Yeah, is that a real thing, boyfriend boxes? Because we opened this box, and there were like old notes from these boyfriends in high school, and I was real curious to see what was happening with that. And they had like old movie ticket stubs from dates with your old boyfriends, and like some pictures. And I was looking at their pictures, and I was thinking, I could whip these dudes, dude. I'd whip these dudes. I ain't worried about these dudes. So a boyfriend box. I just thought, man. And I was like, man, we don't have any room. You got to take what's important, leave behind what's not important, right? And all that stuff that she thought she can never live without, was just kind of packed into boxes and stored up in an attic. And she probably would tell you, I mean, half of that stuff, more than half that stuff, she didn't even want or need anymore. Like it wasn't even that important to her. I don't know why she still has that boyfriend box, but maybe she'll get rid of it one day. But we're like that, right? I've got stuff in boxes, too, that I store up in an attic, right? And it's an interesting feeling to discover that you don't really need what you used to think you need, what you thought was really important stuff. And maybe when you're real young, you don't know any better, so you just, store it up, and you think, God, I'm going to hold on to this stuff forever, right? And it's a good thing that as we get older, we don't do that, right? We don't do that. We don't do that anymore as we get older, do we? I saw a commercial. I actually haven't seen it in a while, but I remember this commercial either a year ago, maybe a couple years ago. But it was an advertisement, and the advertisement was just like a bunch of people carrying around a number. Do you remember that commercial? And the company asked, "What's your number?" And some of the numbers were like $1.5 million, or $2 million, right? Or whatever it was. But the whole idea of the campaign was to simplify the process of retirement planning, and it did that by encouraging them to identify and calculate the total amount of money they need to have saved by the time that they retire. Do y'all remember that commercial? And it was real interesting to me. And this number is unique to each individual. Your number is going to look different than your neighbor's number, so it's going to be real unique for everybody. I just thought that was so fascinating. And if you look at how most people live, the answer is more, right? We've got to have more, and it doesn't matter how much we have. We always think that we need more, which means that our investment strategy is always going to be we've got to get as much as we can, as fast as we can, while we can still get it, right? So maybe we haven't learned a new investment strategy than maybe when we were younger. Right? Maybe it would be worth considering a new one. And, you read through the scriptures, and Jesus talked a lot about relationships. He talked a lot about marriage. He talked a lot about sexuality. He talked a lot about violence. He talked about conflict. He talked about how do you deal with your enemies. But more than any of those things that Jesus talked about, Jesus talked about our money. And I think he did that because Jesus understood the destructive power that money can have over people. And it doesn't matter if you've got a lot, and it really doesn't matter if you've got a little. You realize there are over 1,600 references of money in the Bible. That's a lot. That's a lot. And to me, it's like in God's eyes, our investments, what we put our time, what we invest our lives in, that matters. That's a big, big deal. If you've got your Bible, Jesus said this. It's Matthew chapter 6, and this is going to be like the passage we'll hang on today. And I think it's so good. And y'all stick with me, okay? Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. And it says this, and it's up on the screen. Jesus says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And then he would go on to say this in verse 24. He says, "No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate one or you'll love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and you'll despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." You cannot serve both God and money. And just over the next few minutes that we have, I want to dissect what Jesus is really saying, and then I want to conclude with just a few thoughts that we can write down, hopefully take home with us, that I think can really affect our lives. And the first thing I want to start is with this. I think the big thing that we can take note of is that whatever else that we do, Jesus calls us to invest into something. All right, we can take that away. Jesus calls us to invest in things. Jesus did not say stop desiring. He didn't say that. He didn't stop seeking. He didn't say stop seeking. He didn't say stop planning. He didn't say stop investing. And I think there is a common misconception outside the church, and really I see it inside the church as well, that if you are going to follow Jesus, then that is going to lead you to a less exciting life, a life without adventure, a life without ambition, or a life without excitement. Like I know a lot of people who are interested about following Jesus. They say he's a great teacher, right? He teaches really good things. That's real interesting to me, but they resist taking the step of faith because they think Jesus is going to make their lives boring. But if we get into this passage, we see that he actually says the exact opposite of that Jesus is not calling all of us to settle for less. He is calling us to seek more. He says, store up for yourselves treasures that actually matter. That means that you will be thoughtful. That means that you will be ambitious, that you will be wise about the kind of life that Jesus has prepared for you and for me. And so if that's true, the real question then becomes, in what should we invest so that we have a life that really counts, right? Well, what is it that we should invest in to live a life that really counts? And Jesus, he in this passage, he makes a contrast between two basic kind of investments, between what he calls treasures on earth and treasures in heaven. And you say, that's great, Ethan, that's great. What does this mean? What does this mean? Simply put, treasures on earth are investments that are temporary, that are impermanent, things that are vulnerable to decay, theft, or destruction. It just means it's stuff that doesn't last, right? When we talk about treasures on earth, those are things that don't last. And when we grow up, we learn that these things can include all kind of stuff, like boyfriend boxes, or whatever it is for you, right? Like, or maybe even more sophisticated treasures that we store, for ourselves. Things like, wealth. We got to have a bigger house, or a faster car, or we long for a certain social status, right? I read this. I don't know. I don't even know where I read this, but I just thought it was so fascinating. A few years ago, one of the wealthiest philanthropists in the world died. He was a Jewish man, and he passed away, and he left behind $1 billion. All right, that's a lot of money. All right, so we get it. Older Jewish guy died. He had $1 billion. He left 2 wills. The first will was to be opened immediately after he died, and then the second will was to be opened 30 days after a mourning period. And so he dies, and his family opens the will, and among the instructions in that first will was the request that this man be buried in a certain pair of socks. That's all it was. Right? He just wanted to be buried in a certain pair of socks. And it sounded like a strange request, but the family made it. They tried to make it anyway, but the request was actually refused because it violated a certain Jewish burial custom. And the family went before a rabbi in a Jewish court to appeal the decision, but the decision was upheld. No socks. Guy couldn't be buried in his socks. And so 30 days later, the second will was to be opened. And the second will read this. It said this. It said, "My dear children, by now you must have buried me without my socks. I want you to truly understand that a man can have $1 billion, but in the end, he can't even take along 1 pair of socks." Now, if I'm the kid, I'm like, I don't care about your socks, dude. I want a little cut of $1 billion. That's me, right? That's me. But I'm a sinner, and whatever. Right? All right, but you get that, right? The point is, $1 billion, and the dude, he can't even be buried in a pair of socks. It's no different to him. $1 billion and a pair of socks. Because it doesn't matter how much stuff that you accumulate. It doesn't matter what kind of wealth or fame or accolade. And by the way, I think we're going to be real clear. All those things are not bad. All those things are great things, right? Those are fine things. But the truth is you don't take those with you. They don't last. They just don't last. And when we place our trust in treasures that don't last, we end up measuring our success or our worth relative to those who have more. You say, wow, that person's got a new house. It's pretty big. It's pretty nice. Man. Or I can't believe that person got that job, right? I mean, I can do that job. I can't believe she got that job. I can't believe that. Or, I wasn't invited to that party. I don't know why I wasn't invited to that party. Normally I would have been invited to something like that. But I didn't get invited to something like that. What does that say about me? And this creates a kind of anxiety. Do y'all know? It creates this anxiety in our lives, and maybe if you're a parent, you feel the pressure of just providing. You got to provide more for your children. They got to have more, right? Your kids got to have more than all the other kids. Or if you're, I remember just being. Even before we were married, before we were dating, I just was young and I didn't know anything. But there were these pressures of living up to a certain standard that I would get. I would feel anxious about that. I would feel anxious about that. Kids, all of us, right? We remember going through grade school, and we always would compare, right? Man, they got a new shirt. I want that, We always do that. Am I getting into your living room yet? And it's mine too. We live these anxious lives based on a sense of wanting or a sense of needing more and more, not because we think that these things are going to provide peace or provide some kind of security, but because our lives, they start to boil down to a number. They start to boil down to a number. And how much do you need to have the good life? I mean, the real good life. What's your number? And there's another place where you're known by your number. It's called prison, right? And we laugh, but we do that, right? We do that. We imprison ourselves when we give our lives away to storing up treasures that end up in an attic or end up in a security deposit box somewhere. Right? We do that. And if we're still not sure on what Jesus is getting at, he puts it about as clear as you can put it. He says you cannot serve God and money. Can't do it. Can't do it. He doesn't say money's evil. Never does he say money's evil. Never say that. It doesn't say that we can't learn to use it well or provide for our families. He simply says you can't put your trust there. You can't put your security there. You can't put your future there. You can serve one. And I just have been real convicted. I got to be honest, over the past few days, just kind of going through notes and stuff like that. And I think I've been convicted because it speaks directly into our assumption that our best chance at a good life is to get as much as we can and get it as fast as we can, as much, just as quickly as we can get it. And that assumption is a lie. And it's a lie that tells you that you're only as good as your number, and your number should always be more. And I think what a tragedy it has become, that the value of a human being has been placed on their bank account, and it's not so. It's not so. But the good news about Jesus is that he knows that we are worth far more than this. He does. That you were made for what he calls treasures in heaven. And these are treasures that last, these things that really count, that matter, everyday life that matters. And they're not just gold crowns that some glad morning when this life is over we're going to get, right? He's not talking about that. He's not talking about that. These are real investments that you can make and experience in your life today. That if you simply take Jesus' word seriously in your life, you can begin to understand what it means to store up treasures in heaven. So I want to challenge you this week. You start today, start tomorrow. Start, right? Start making commitments and start making priorities about treasures that will last forever. And just to make real clear, so you can have like a real concrete list in your hand, I'm going to go through 4 of them with you. There are 1,000 different ways that you can store up for yourself treasures in heaven. But just to kind of give you an idea, I'm going to go through 4 of them, okay? Does that sound good? So what's that mean? What does that mean? Storing, we hear treasures in heaven. What does that mean? First thing is this. Write this down. It means investing in my life with God. That's what it means. You want to store up treasures in heaven that nobody takes away? It means that we invest, that I invest in my life with God. I invest in my life with God. And if you think that you're the only one seeking out treasure, or me, then we've missed it. Because God is seeking you as well. He's seeking you. And maybe you've never heard this, or maybe you've never believed this, but God's greatest treasure is you. Joe, God's greatest treasure is you. It is. Peter, God's greatest treasure is you. It's you. It's you. Chuck, God's greatest treasure is you. That's awesome. That's awesome. That God gave everything. That he paid the ultimate price through the life and death of his son, so that we could have life, we could have it abundantly. We talked about that last week, and yet it is so easy with all the other pressures, with all the other anxieties to make our relationship with God the very last thing that we think about, because we get stressed and we get busy and we get tired and the job is hard and we got to, I know. But there is something, y'all, to taking time each day, even if it's just for a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is for you, to spend some time with God who will remind you how valuable that you are. Oh, my dad talks about it a lot. The first thing he does when he wakes up, and I try to do this too, before he even gets out of bed, he just props up on his elbow. And just for a few minutes when it's quiet, he just kind of reviews the day and tries to be real introspective about his life and just have a minute with God before he even starts the day. And it doesn't have to be 20 minutes. For some of you, you probably need to start with like 1. 1 minute would be great. It'd be awesome, right? But just start. And just imagine that you had a daily reminder that your worth is without measure, that your value to God is safe, that your eternal future is secure. And it doesn't matter what people think about you or what people say about you. It doesn't matter what failures you have had in the past, because we all have had failures, all of us. And maybe you spend time with God in prayer. Maybe that's something that's real for you. Or maybe you spend time with God in music. Rachel and I love music. We love music. And we certainly listen to Christian radio, but we just like good music, man. We just love good music. And you ever get goosebumps when you listen to something? Man, that's good. I feel like there's something spiritual about that God is there somehow. Maybe you spend time with God like that. Maybe you spend time with God in silence. Maybe you go for a walk. Maybe you like to be out in nature. Maybe you go for a jog. Maybe you go work out. Some people like to cook and spend time with God. Some people like to open up God's word. I encourage you to do that. Open up his word and read a psalm. Just 1 psalm a day. Read a proverb, one proverb a day. Spend time with God. Invest in your life. Though nobody takes that away from you, right? Nobody takes that away from you. Second thing is this. What does it mean? Storing up treasures in heaven means that I got to prioritize my relationships. Prioritizing my relationships. I know of a guy that he counsels married couples with kids. It's kind of like his specialty. And time after time, he'll tell me they come in, these married folks will come in and they'll say, we don't know what the heck we're doing. Like, we're dying, right? We're dying here. We don't know what we're doing. Like, is there something that we should read? Is there a pill that we should take? Better yet, is there a pill that our kids should take? I think, man, that'd be great, right? That'd be great. And, it's so interesting. His first response is always, like, he hears what they're saying about their kids, and his first response is always, have you made sure that you have one night a week for a date? I thought that was interesting. Like, have you created time together each night after the kids are in bed to spend time with each other? And he says, you know what? You do that for 2 months. Do that for 2 months. I don't want to see you for 2 months. I want you to do that. And then come back, and we can deal with all this other stuff. And he says, you know what? A lot of people don't come back. A lot of people don't come back. And I think what these couples are experiencing is the fruit of prioritizing their relationship, which is worth far more than a job title. It's worth far more than a higher tax bracket. Right? And yes, we have to be good stewards to provide for our loved ones. I get that. Everybody's got bills. We all got bills. I get that. Trust me. All right. But not if that means that if I only see my wife once a month, that's not good enough. That is not me prioritizing my relationship. I love what C.S. Lewis says. I just think this is so great. C.S. Lewis, one of my favorite authors, he says this: when I have learnt to love God better than my earthly dearest, I shall love my earthly dearest better than I do now. Insofar as I learn to love my earthly dearest at the expense of God and instead of God, I shall be moving towards the state in which I shall not love my earthly dearest at all. I love this last sentence. When first things are put first, second things are not suppressed, they are increased. I'm saying that line again. When first things are put first, second things are not suppressed, but they're increased. You know what he's saying? He's saying first things are first. When I invest in my life with God, when I make it a priority to just acknowledge Him daily, to spend time with Him daily, when I begin to do that, the relationships that I have with the people that are closest to me, they increase. They do not get suppressed. They get better. They get better. They get better. Treasures that last means that we prioritize real life people. Grab your neighbor's hand. Just whoever's sitting next to you. I don't even care if you know them or not. Just grab their hand. That's a real person, right? That matters. Prioritize them, right? And if you're sitting by somebody you know, that's a little weird. I get that. But you know what I mean? These are people that we do life with. They matter, right? They matter. Prioritize your relationship. Because that's a treasure that nobody takes away. Nobody takes away. Third thing is this. Write this down. Storing up treasures in heaven means that I serve where there's need. Serving where there's need. Ministry is not done by professionals in a church. I say that again. Ministry is not done by professionals in a church. Ministry is the work of God's people wherever there is a need. Always. And most of the times, ministry does not happen within these walls. Most of the time, ministry happens outside these walls. Right? And growing up, maybe you might have thought that, like, if you heard somebody was called by God. Have you heard that before? Well, I was just called by God. And you hear that a lot. And you hear that a lot about, like, missionaries or pastors or nuns or, whatever. But those are the people that are called by God. This is what, Paul writes this to Timothy. He says this, 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 9. Paul writes this. He says, He saved us and He called us to be His own people, not because of what we have done, not because we've got a degree in theology, right? He didn't. It's not because of that. It's but because of His own purpose. That means that we were created to serve, that we were created to be a part of ministries that are happening right now at this church. Do you know that there's a group of ladies, I don't even know if it's all ladies, it's just a little group of folks that nobody asked them to do this. We've got a guy who is, Gary, we prayed for earlier today, that they've just made dinner for him for every night for the past week. Nobody told them to do that, but they just know that his wife is probably really stressed and probably doesn't want to think about dinner. And so there's been a group here who makes them dinner. That is a need that is being filled. Every time that we have someone have a baby here at the church, for the next 2 weeks after the baby's born, they've got dinner at their house. There's a group that they just figure it out, and they send them pizza, or somebody physically takes them dinner, because it's tough having a baby when you're a new mom. And there's just a need that is filled. We've got a group of ladies who pray for this church regularly. They pray for this church specifically, that literally for you, for everybody in this church. Have you ever felt like does that make you feel good that you've got people praying for you on your behalf? Praying to God. Why? Because nobody told them to do that. It was just, they just thought people should be prayed for. And so they pray for us. Guys who play up here, nobody tells them to come, right? Nobody gets paid. They just come because they are really good at what they do, and they think, wow, I like making good music. We got 2 awesome saxophone players. I think it's the coolest thing in the world. Yeah. Is that awesome? Nobody told, I just found out that Aaron was awesome at saxophone. So I was like, dude, you got to come play with us. And it happens all over this church. Tilson, you've given so much to this church. I look across, there's countless stories of people who have said, enough about my number. Enough about that. Let's go out and let's do something that matters for someone. And let's do it today. And if you haven't already, find a need and go invest your life in it. Do it. It doesn't matter what it is. Find a need. Go invest your life. Well, you do that today. I'm going to do it too. All right? 4th thing is this. Storing up treasures in heaven. That means giving regularly as a discipline of trust. Man. Giving regularly as a discipline of trust. Rarely would any of us gauge our spiritual health based on our tithe or based on just our giving, right? Because I like to think that my faith in God is strong because it feels strong. But what I've discovered in my life is that I don't really trust God if I don't trust Him with my checkbook. And here's what I don't mean. I don't mean just because you don't put something in the bucket. I don't care about that, right? Like, if you give, that's awesome. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. But I don't really trust God if I don't trust Him with my checkbook. And who's been the most influential person to me in my life about this particular subject has been my mom. And my mom's not here this morning. She's her dad is going through some Alzheimer's and some dementia. So if you think about her, pray for her because she's had a lot of stress on her too. But she's just been a wonderful example of a woman who's understood the power of giving. And she's never had any substantial amount of money, ever. But for her, it wasn't hard. It was a decision that she had made up already in her mind that this was going to be a part of her life. And she would always teach me. She would say, if you say I trust God, at some point you got to act on that. At some point. And she would always tell me that for her, the way that she viewed God was that she always viewed God as Jehovah Jireh. Have you ever heard that? Jehovah Jireh. Do you know what that means? That is a Hebrew phrase that means God provides. God provides, right? That He has provided for her every need, even when she wasn't sure. And there have been times where she wasn't sure if it was going to have groceries or if we're going to do gas this week. We're going to do one or the other, right? But He's provided every need. And by the way, this doesn't mean that you can't follow Jesus and save money. It's a really good thing to save money. I encourage you to save money. Like if you read the story of the Good Samaritan, the reason why the Good Samaritan could help was because he had saved money that he used to pay the innkeeper for the man who was beaten and robbed on the side of the road, right? It's a good thing to save money. But you have to give. You have to be willing to give as a discipline of trust. And that's a huge risk. That's a huge risk in a world, in a just culture that we live in, right? Because you've got to take God seriously when he says, seek first my kingdom, and all that you need will be added as you need it. It means that we have to stare in the face of all the what ifs that we'd rather buy or save our way out of and say, instead, my life is worth more than a number. Right? And it's an interesting feeling to discover that you don't really need what used to be really important stuff to you. Right? Yes, it can be scary. Yeah, it can be unsettling. But you know what? It can also be the road to real meaning and real significance and real freedom in your life. And wouldn't it be something, if like we as a church, if we were committed each and every day, not just to get as much as we can, as fast as we can, as often as we can, it wouldn't be about that, but that because there's enough of that in this world already, but that we were committed to invest in treasures that are stored up for us in heaven, to live a life that really counts for something and for someone. That'd be the good life, right? That'd be the good life. Or another way to put it would be like this. I read this. I don't even know who wrote it. But you say, what does it mean to store up treasures in heaven? I think it looks like this. One writer said, to come to the end of the day or the end of a life with the satisfaction of having stood for what is good, with the joy of having been loved and having loved well in return, with the memory of having shown mercy, and the peace of having walked with God. These are the true treasures. These are the treasures of the kingdom. It's a fortune that no thief can plunder. I think we hear heaven, and I think immediately we think of someplace else over there. But can I tell you something? When I hear heaven, I think heaven as like the very breath that I breathe. I think of heaven. Jesus, when he taught us to pray, you know how he taught us to pray? He says, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth just as it is in heaven. Which means when we store up for ourselves treasures in heaven, we can enjoy them right now. We can do it right now. Right now. We can invest time every day to spend with God. We can prioritize relationships to the people that matter the most to us. We can serve when we see that there is there's a need to serve. We can serve, and then we can begin to give, and we can begin to give not because it's always the funnest thing to just throw money. It's giving because it's a discipline of trust. That's what it means to store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Dara, I'm going to ask you to come up and play something. I just want us all to bow our heads. And let's just pray. I know that there are some heavy hearts this morning. I know that. But I also know that there are some folks here who are like just things are happening and things are clicking good, and maybe it's been a while since that's happened for them, but they feel like they're in such a good place. And I just want to pray for all of us this morning, that for wherever you are in your journey, wherever you are today, whatever you had on your heart when you walked in through those doors this morning, that we can trust Jesus at his words when he says, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. That for all of us, even maybe some of us, maybe we're not feeling it. For some of us, life's been great. But for all of us, we can begin to do the things that really make a difference in this life. We can really begin to see people as you see them, God. And we can find a need and we can serve there. God, I love this church, but I don't love this church nearly as much as you love this church. And God, our prayer is that we are the kind of place, we are the kind of church where we can come together as people with all different kinds of backgrounds, all different kind of junk, all different kind of baggage that we bring into this place, but that we can come together, and we can come together in one accord, and that is to sing your praise, God, that you are holy, that you are awesome, that you are mighty, that you change lives. You've got the power to do that, and we can experience a real life change today. God, may that be the kind of church that we are, not only just here, but in this community. God, for those who are battling sickness right now, that's just still thinking Gary, and there's others here, I know. God, I pray that you would heal them. I pray that you would heal them. However that looks. I pray that you give them peace through the storm. They can know that you are God and you are good. May we all know that. God, we love you so much. Thank you for revealing yourself to all of us this morning. Be with us throughout this week. We love you. We pray these things in Jesus' holy name. Amen.